Exactly 2 weeks till the election, and yes, it is October 22nd, 2024, which means that November 5th is just around the corner. And of course, there's all kinds of things going on in that regards with the campaigns and all along those lines. Of course, a lot of world events are taking place as well. So definitely a lot is taking place. And Donald Trump urges Christians to vote, and it looks like Harris has a significant advantage with young voters, but Donald Trump is declaring that Kamala Harris will be destructive to religion as he courts the Christian voters days after making some other remarks at a rally. But definitely, former President Trump campaigned with Dr. Ben Carson in Greenville, North Carolina, so right here in the state where I'm at, and all along those lines. So we'll see how this all plays out and all along that kind of way. And apparently, Trump was rebuked by Arnold Palmer's daughter for fawning over the late golfer legend's manhood and all along those kind of things, or his genitalia, and in that kind of way. But definitely, we'll see how this all plays out, or whether it hurts his election or not, and all in that kind of place. And definitely, of course, he was recently serving the role as a fast food worker, and all in that kind of way. So definitely lots going on in the elections, and we'll see where the candidates are out campaigning at, and all along those lines. So. Definitely, we're asking, and folks are asking, is Musk $1 million a day cash giveaway to U.S. voters legal? So definitely, that's what we're seeing folks talking about as well, and we'll see if that's anything that folks will pay attention to, and all along those lines. So definitely, uh, and McDonald's workers are roasting Trump over insulting cosplay fry cook stunt. So definitely, some folks are upset over what he did in that regards as well. So, like I said, it'll be definitely a very interesting thing to go on, and definitely some people are even saying that seeking a historic win, Harris is facing a familiar foe, which is the whole notion of sexism. And some folks are asking, is America ready for a woman commander in chief? So that is something else that is playing into the election as well. As far as the world news, there's a number of things happening in the world front. Israel airstrikes pounded Lebanon and Gaza. So there was a deadly Israeli strike in Beirut and Gaza as Blinken returns to push for peace amid the spiraling warfare. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And India and China have struck a deal that could ease tension along its disputed border. So definitely, China confirms pact with India to resolve conflict over that disputed border. And like I said, Antony Blinken is going to Israel, trying to get a renewed U.S. push for the Gaza ceasefire. So we'll see whether this happens or it doesn't happen, and all along those lines. And Paul Whelan says he passed information from Ukraine front lines to U.S. from Russia prison. So definitely that was something else going on, as Paul Whelan's life in a Russian prison was discussed, and he said it was monotonous and filthy. So that's one of the things he was saying as well. And the son of the founder of the modern Singapore says he is now a political refugee. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And Mexican priest who spoke out against cartel violence was killed. So a well-known priest was shot dead after officiating mass in Mexico State, and apparently he was known for speaking out against cartel violence and all along those lines. And other parts of South America, the Alejandro Toledo, the ex-president of Peru, got 20 years for corruption. So he got a long jail term on a grave conviction, and all along those lines. And as we said yesterday, Vladimir Putin is hosting the BRICS summit, and definitely it looks like he's got some folks over there. So a major summit he's hosting is showing that he does have some folks that he is still on the phone with, and put all along those lines. As a matter of fact, Russia is pushing a new world order agenda as it hosts a beefed up BRICS summit. So we'll see how this plays out in the world uh, of politics too, or the world politics. And definitely weather is in the news worldwide as well. So Oscar has exited Cuba, and the Bahamas are under threat. So definitely it looks like folks are asking whether Hurricane Oscar is going to be a threat to the United States. So we'll see whether it moves in this way or not. And South Korea may send military personnel to Ukraine amid the suspected North Korean troops being in there helping Russia as well. So definitely looks like South Korea may be joining that world as well. And Sherelle Golan, a Hamas attack survivor, died by suicide on her 22nd birthday. So the Nova Festival survivor took her own life, and her family is blaming the state for ignoring signs of PTSD. So definitely, so be following that story as well. Also, and an Italian surfer dies after being impaled by a fish off the coast of Indonesia. So it looks like they died in a freak accident after a swordfish impaled her while she was surfing in Indonesia, and it looks like she was uh, stabbed in the chest by a swordfish, and she died doing what she loved, according to her friends and family, and all along those lines. And Cuba is fighting to come back from a nationwide blackout. Then a storm came around and added to the things that they were going through. So Cuba faces Hurricane Oscar after a nationwide blackout. So that is something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And it looks like a woman was left hanging upside down for 7 hours after falling in the Hunter Valley rock crevice, and that's something else that is on the world news as well. So it looks like while she was reaching for her phone, she got stuck upside down in those particular boulders, but she was rescued after getting trapped in a crevice for 7 hours while trying to retrieve her phone. So definitely that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And it looks like China is turning up the heat on Taiwan with live fire drills. So that's something else that's going on as well. And Moldova and Georgia ring alarm bells for the EU. So Moldova barely approves its EU referendum. So definitely Kremlin is claiming that the Moldova's elections were not free and results raise questions. So we're going to get into discussions about a number of these things and other things that folks may have on their mind. So I'll bring in Rick Rosner and Sasha Starr. So we got both of them with me and everything. So definitely that's just some of the news items. But any thoughts around any of those or anything else that you want to add? I know that definitely
About
talked about something.
1/8 of voters have already voted. The numbers are in for 17.5 million voters, and another 3-4 million have mailed their ballots and they haven't been received yet. So 1/8 of the election is already over.
Okay.
Um, the early voting numbers, look fine for the Democrats and Harris. The poll numbers continue to be dominated by right wing crap slinging polls. And if you can find the less biased polls among the flood of bullshit, you can see that they're not bad. 538 has a number of swing states tied, um, but that's combining the right leaning polls with the less biased polls.
Yeah. Well, but we're also joined by Dan and everything. So Dan, one of the things that Donald Trump said was he was appealing apparently to the religious community and saying that Kamala Harris would be bad for religion and all along those lines. So I know that you are a very religious man yourself, being a Mormon, if I remember correctly, and everything. But I just
Well,
wanted to.
I just know that I would not have been welcomed at her rally because Jesus saves. So I would have been told to go down the street to a different meeting where that message would be more accepted. Because there was no place for Jesus when you're talking about abortion. And Rick touts these unbiased polls, but Rick is liberal. So, obviously he would think that the liberal polls would be less biased than the other polls. So, I mean, I have no opinion about which polls are biased and which polls aren't. I do admit it's going to be a very close race. And like I said, I have election fatigue.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have election fatigue on
I
both
do
sides
too.
of
I
the.
do too. Yeah, on both sides of the coin. Yeah, everybody just wants it to be done.
Everybody wants those
Well,
2 weeks.
I want to say something, in my religious education and learnings in the Christianity world, yeah, and in other religions as well, which I have studied. But if you believed in Jesus, Jesus should be where there are things that even you oppose to. That's Jesus went everywhere. He had no fear of anything. And if he chose to condemn something, then he did. And most of the things I saw Jesus condemn was more on the fact of, men charging taxes, men doing things in places, men not being nice to the angels. I mean, I saw God in the books that I read of Christianity. I saw those kind of things, but I never heard that Jesus would turn his back to anyone. So, maybe your religion is different than the Christianity that I learned about Jesus, but my Jesus didn't.
Well, that's highly critical and highly hypocritical.
It's not
really?
hypocritical. Hypocritical is someone who says Jesus would turn his back on someone.
Well, no, I'm not saying that he would, but the fact that Kamala Harris said there's no place at her rally for someone who would say Jesus saves. I mean, she said that. I didn't say it. She said
I guess it's kind of like J.D. Vance saying that he created these stories because he wasn't getting enough attention.
No, I saw the video. I mean, I'm not making.
I saw a lot of videos too, and they both say my
Kimberly,
concern is what
and
happened.
I know that she said that at a rally.
Well, you and I both know
kids.
that J.D.
And
Vance spread rumors of demonizing people that he
forced those kids to leave.
But my biggest
rally.
concern, is all the people that Trump
Jesus would have been against people killing babies. You know what I mean?
I predicted that, didn't I, guys?
Kimberly, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not take innocent life.
I predicted that Trump campaigns. This has been my speech for a whole year. My speech for a whole year has been Trump campaigns on spreading fear, creating hate and anger, and he will lead his people into the desert where he will convince them they are thirsty and to drink the sand, and he will abandon them.
So you're gonna compare Trump to Moses
all year many times. And what happened last week? Oh my God! It was like I predicted that whole scenario that he.
I don't know what you're talking about, Kimberly.
But who in their right mind in today's time, given the assassination attempts on Trump, and they have actually, fatally wounded people in the crowd, who would want to be a crowd at his rallies to begin with? That's like
about half of America, Kimberly. Half of America.
Kimberly, it's curiosity. People want to see themselves how he's going to be assassinated and witness it, and then tell this story to their children and grandchildren.
I mean, that's wishful thinking.
And bulletproof clothes.
Part of America. You guys are just
wear a bulletproof helmet.
Syndrome,
it's
right?
Scary though. No, it's
the
scary.
Country wasn't destroyed the first time he was president.
What,
he had good
what
policies.
is bad? What is
forward.
Bad is the amount of fear that they spread and people divide rather than uniting. Nobody has united.
Well, I mean, Trump isn't responsible for all the bad decisions.
He led them to their deaths with his blaggership and COVID,
Biden
and he's led people to their deaths in the desert.
Any of that, is he?
And his rallies.
No, they made those decisions. They made the decision to let 10 million or 11 million people across the border. They made the decision to create inflation and outrageous prices. They made the decisions to block all the ports and keep shipments from coming in, creating shortages on our shelves. They made the decisions to stop the gas production, so the price of gas went outrageous.
Hold on,
They made the decisions
Hold on. Trump
to go out of Afghanistan and leave 5 billion.
Hold on a second.
Let somebody else talk instead of talking over each other.
Yeah,
Trump negotiated a deal with.
I'm trying to make a comment that I would like to know if there's going to be any food in this country if we send all the migrants back, and if so, can we even afford it? So because the migrants have played a big part in the food, and we could use their helping hands now.
Well, but a lot of migrants that are here legally that work in the fields, their jobs are being displaced.
Well, I mean, the only way to know that there are 10 million of them would be that somebody's accounted for them.
Well, I think if Trump cleans up the criminals, the criminal element, the rapists and the criminals that were sent to Venezuela and empty prisoners, and the people that were deemed mentally ill but were sent across our border anyway, and the illegal Chinese
So
folks.
if
that
you
came
have
in
an
the United
accounting
States.
of every one of these, why aren't they registered then? If you have an accounting
Well,
of all of this,
because what's his face didn't do it. I mean, they didn't take the
well,
time
then, so how do you know there are
vet
that many?
the immigrants.
How
They
do you
didn't
know
do
there
the
are
work.
that many criminals? How do you know?
I
You
don't know. It's not my
You're
numbers.
making it
It's
exactly.
Homeland
You're
Security's
making
numbers.
it up.
Kimberly,
You're
Homeland
creating
Security
fear where fear
provided those
does not
numbers.
need
This
to
is
Kimberly,
not, you guys yelling over
Security
each other is
provided
Yeah,
those
not
no,
a
numbers.
good
exactly.
show. One person talk at a time.
Okay, well,
damn
let's
it.
Okay, I
Sasha
will.
talk his
Homeland
hand.
Security provided those numbers. I didn't make them up. Trump didn't make them up. Homeland Security did.
Trump made him up. Go ahead, Sasha.
I would like to
Bullshit.
ask how come that no one person ever asked Trump about him using illegal immigrants labor in the 70s and the 80s when he just entered the construction business. Not only that he used illegal immigrants primarily from Poland, he was torturing them. They had to stay in inhuman conditions right at the place where they were working. A lot of them were died and those who didn't die, he even didn't pay. He said, okay, you can sue me. It will take 15 years and all your savings. Just go away. I don't want to see you. It's all documented. It's all in books. Okay, this is the kind of a company we're dealing with.
He'll file
Oh my
bankruptcy.
goodness.
One of my biggest concerns, though, is the fact that he had that Trump, the tax cut job act that he implemented. He put in place. Supposedly, it was great, but he's never campaigned on it. He never bragged about it. He's never campaigned on it at all. You would think if it was that great and if he did us such a great favor, he would campaign on it. But the only thing we got was, JD Vance said a little bit of something about it real fast. Then he realized he was probably not going where he should have. But, he said, oh, yeah, we did this great thing and it did everyone a great job. And then in the same breath, and I can play it back for you, in the same breath, he sits there and goes, I bet all of you are feeling really bad and struggling. And I feel sorry for all of you. We're really going to work hard at fixing that. But how
Tax
can
Act
you be
is the
doing
thing that
great
caused the problem.
and then we're doing bad? I mean, it just, all
Well,
in
but
one.
that's not what caused the problem, Kimberly.
It is.
No, it was the overspending by the Biden administration.
Well, if you're not making
Inflation.
enough money and bringing in enough money and then giving it back, then you're
Kimberly, the
overspending.
tax rates were cut across the board
Giving
for both the poor and the wealthy.
the money back
The
at
interest rates were
40%
just a couple of points.
caused a problem.
The only thing that you have a complaint against is the corporate tax rates.
No, I have a complaint against the individual tax rates. I just had a
Have you
conversation
seen?
with David
have
about
you-
this. My
Have
problem
you
isn't the
looked at the
corporate.
tax rates?
My problem was the individual tax cuts.
Did
for
you
anyone
look
earning
at
over
the tax rates and compare
$400,000.
them from
That was my
2016 to
problem.
now? Have you looked at the
Individuals
tax
should
rates?
not get
I have.
40%. Individuals should not get 40%. My problem wasn't with the corporate tax.
It
law.
wasn't 40%.
Yes, it was. Anyone who
was-
earned over $400,000 a year got 40%.
No, that was
You didn't get
39%.
No,
it went
it was
down to
40%.
37%.
It's
It was
40%.
2%. It was moron. It was 2%. You don't go look at the. I published a list of those tax
When you
rates.
published it,
Divided online.
I've caught accountants doing wrong things before. I've busted them. I've even shown a couple of my accountants some mistakes that they're making.
Kimberly, the
I
tax
have.
rates are published. Go online. You look at them. You compare them.
Individual
Everyone got a break.
cuts
Now, I have
for-
done hundreds of tax returns for people. And I happen to know that the people that benefited the most from those tax cuts were poor people who got the earned income tax credit, the child tax credit. Most
The
of those
rich
people end
people
up
got
getting
those too, on top of the
$10,000 and
40%.
$20,000 tax returns for doing freaking nothing and didn't pay anything in. So I mean, the whole thing that benefited poor people the most relative to their position. You got to understand it's relative to their position. Now, the wealthy people got a 2% tax cut. That's what they got.
No, they got a
Corporate
40%.
rate was a
They got a
discount
40%
from
tax cut.
35% to 20%. No, go look at the tables. I'm not making this crap up.
I did.
No, you're not. Listen, I
I'll
published
tell
those
you
tax
what,
rates.
Dan, seeing how you have access to your tables, put them up here. Show
Okay,
them.
I'll go find my tax tables. I shared them with what's his name, Shaq a long time ago, because I couldn't
You shared them
understand
with
what the hell
Shaq,
you're
but that's
talking
not
about.
here. That's not
You're,
here.
they were. I posted them up. I had a Microsoft Word, and I copied it from the Google comparing the 24 rates to the 2016 rates. And let me tell you, there isn't a whole lot of difference. 37% is the highest rate for people making 600,000 or more. It goes down to 35% for people making 400,000 to 600,000. It was 37 and 39. So it's gone down 2 points for each of those categories. The same has happened for the lower class, 2 points, or 3 points even. Go from 12 to 10, and from 15 to 12, and from 22 to 20, and from 25 to 20. Kimberly, you're making a big deal out of hardly anything. The other thing that they did, though, is they allowed capitalization of business expenses to be expensed in a single year. But they spent money on actual products to take that deduction. And then when the effective use of those items are done, they have to recapture the depreciation. So I mean, I don't know if it's a huge benefit. Now the corporate rate, we know that went down. It went down to 20%, but it even helped small businesses because the small businesses ended up getting a similar deduction with respect to the corporate rate because they got the offset on the earned income or the business income credit. So 20% off the top. That helps stimulate small businesses and helps save money from taxes for small businesses, so they can put the money back in their businesses. Small businesses are the engine of American.
So this is the individual tax cut rate. It was 39.6% for anyone making over $400,000.
Yep.
The child tax credit went to the wealthy people as well as the poor people. It was across the board. I don't know why you always say it was just for the poor people, but you got to quit twisting words around. If you're a real tax accountant, you would sit there and say that it went across the board, but everyone benefited from the child tax credit. But here is the tax tables. It was 39.6%, but majority of the people who reviewed, just, I guess, rounded it up to 40, but, that is 0.4% difference. So,
hardly anything.
It's 39.6% is a lot. 39.6% for an individual. This was not corporate. I don't know why you keep trying to say I'm confusing corporate.
There isn't a lot of difference in the rates, Kimberly. That's my point.
I'm just saying that the wealthy earning over $400,000 receive nobody should get a 40% tax.
People who are making hardly anything don't hardly pay any taxes, or they get money back. They don't. They just
actually people who are earning barely a living pay majority of the taxes in this.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
The rich people pay the majority.
I just had this conversation with David yesterday in private. And
David? He's not even an attorney.
Majority of the people are
the majority of the taxes.
Try to save
90% of the tax burden is on the
but upper middle class is not bearing the weight. It's lower middle.
Kimberly, you're absolutely wrong about this, and David is wrong if he's telling you that.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, he is.
It's right there in the tables. You're wrong.
It's freaking obvious.
Present me the tables you have. Present the tables.
Okay, Kimberly. People who make less than $100,000
I think we need to change the subject because we have other worldly.
I had a question for Dan really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Off the tax and everything, because I heard the comment that you made and everything, and I have actually done events where sometimes activists and evangelical activists do sometimes try to crash a party, and that's what it sounds like was going on, and what Kamala was referring to and everything. So the way she handled it was probably wrong, and I will give you that. But I have done events even here in Durham where there have been activists in the Christian community that have tried to crash the event and have tried to change the focus of what the event was. So that might have been what was happening. I have not watched everything, so I don't know that that's what happened. But I was just wondering, is that a possibility that there could have been some people that were trying to basically crash the event? Because I have seen folks do that.
I just
even
read
here in
about
Durham.
it.
I don't know
about it. I saw some. Well, let Dan go, then I'll go.
No, go ahead.
So I saw some video, but it wasn't clear. A couple people were yelling at her. It turned out to be a couple high school kids yelling, "Jesus is Lord." Now, was that legible to her? I think she had a quip ready if she was being heckled. She didn't say there's no place for Jesus at our rally. She said, "I think you belong at the smaller rally down the street." She didn't say anything about Jesus. Whether she heard them yelling about Jesus, I don't know, because people had different.
She said, "You're at the wrong rally."
Yeah, no, she did. She said, "You're at the wrong rally. I think you want to be at the smaller one down the street," which I'm sure she would have quipped at anybody who was yelling at her. When you're being yelled at in the middle of a rally, can you understand what's being yelled at you? I don't know. But she
heard.
But yeah, the kids were interviewed by the New York Post yesterday or today, and they said they were yelling, "Jesus is Lord." So interrupting her speech, and she said she didn't say anything about Jesus.
Well, she said you're in the wrong rally.
Right, but that doesn't mean that she said that that there's no room for Jesus at this rally. She
handled it wrong, like you said. She handled it wrong.
I don't like. She would have said that. I feel to any hecklers, regardless of what they were yelling.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
it was said in context.
And like I said, I don't know the context in terms of what they were doing or how much she heard. To your point, Rick, and like I said, I have done events in Durham, and I think I've done a couple in Raleigh and even some in Charlotte, where I know that there have been folks that have literally been part of. Because there's some very active, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but there are some very active folks that are trying to convert people, and they try to convert people by coming to events that are not always their focus group and everything. Because I mean, I know that even at Mary Durham, which was an event here in Durham several years ago, which was a kind of civic-minded organization and everything, but it was organized by some of the members of the LGBT community, but other communities as well, that there were folks that were part of the Christian right that were trying to convert people. Now, what we did at that particular rally, and that's maybe what she should have done, is we kind of like let them have their words and let them speak, but not necessarily speak in front of the main activity. So maybe she should have
ignored it, really.
Or she could have ignored it, exactly.
Yeah, that's what she should have done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just bad judgment.
But I mean, her comment had nothing to do with Jesus. And had everything to do with people interrupting her speech by yelling.
Yeah. And that's my point. That happens quite often.
I also want to tell people we do have a third party choice. We're doing a debate for all parties. We're invited, a presidential debate with David Walker and another co-host. It's October 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be 2.5 hours. I don't know how 5 p.m. got on there, but we will change that. But I think that they've put a lot of work into this. I am told that nobody's allowed to dodge answers, that solutions are expected and full answers are expected. But fact checking remains on the viewers. So, but please join us in seeing all of the parties who are campaigning. If they don't show up, they don't show up, but they've all been invited. But here's...
I got to say, I'm a fan of David Walker, the former comptroller of the U.S., who's the host and one of the hosts and moderators of the debate. I'm not a fan of Jill Stein. She's kind of a
Nobody is. Nobody is a fan of Jill Stein because she really, I guess they claim she hasn't done anything other than just have a name and be there. I think she's the only one who can afford to show up as one of the alternatives. As we were told yesterday and educated on, there are 3 other parties. There's the Green Party, the Constitutional and Libertarian. And it was very eye-opening and educational to learn about the positions of all 3. And it's going to be fun to hear, solutions, real solutions, not people pointing at each other and shaming them or, talking about each other, but people standing there answering the questions, not dodging them. So, and I think that that's going to be refreshing for a change.
It will be refreshing, but I'm not 100% sure it's going to happen because, as you know, and as Dan knows, debates sometimes have a habit of getting personal. So even though I know Dan will try to keep it away from personal, and I don't know the other hosts, I would not be surprised if there are not subtle digs at both Kamala and Donald, and if they're not digs at each other as well, because I think that's just the nature of debates in general. But I could be wrong, and maybe they'll have a civil debate and a more traditional debate. But I'm hoping that that's what it is, and we'll find out on tomorrow. But I do know that just from having been involved in a couple of debates, even here on this line and everything, that sometimes they can get less than civil. So we'll see if they can stay civil.
So I'd be interested in hearing the Libertarian candidate because to some extent, the Republican Party is split between Trumpers and never Trumpers. And if the Republican Party is going to be rebuilt, if Trump wins or if Trump doesn't win, it's going to have to move. Trump's 78, so he's not going to be around forever. And the Republican Party is going to have to, rebuild itself after Trump. And I was talking to somebody about, they may need to form a coalition with libertarians. But the trouble is, libertarians, at least in the U.S., haven't been very organized. So I'd be interested in seeing if there's a libertarian candidate who can make arguments for, that aren't just like the absolutist sloganeering, like taxation is theft.
Right. And I think that David's position now is to try to promote alternative candidates starting after, now, but hey guys, wake up. And there's alternatives and maybe we need to look that direction. That there are solutions out there. We don't have to be just a 2-party system. And I think that that's going to be maybe a potential turn of the wheel for the next 4 years is to introduce people, make them aware of these alternatives. That his debate will be showing on Pod TV, on our website, on Pod TV Live, on Amazon and Roku, as well as our C-SPAN. C-SPAN is filming and broadcasting, and then we're allowed the alternative links for broadcasting. So I think it's just good to hear alternatives, and I think a lot of people are not educated on the fact that there are more alternatives and choices in life, that we're just not left with 2. So, who knows? Maybe it's a waste of energy, maybe not.
Well, we'll
Maybe
find out everything.
need it.
It's always good to have alternatives.
But Kim, I've seen the people that have known about the alternatives for years. I mean, even here in this area, we see the Libertarians, we see the Green Party, we see a number of the other parties that campaign on a regular basis. And in all cases, they have won in the state level. I want to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, and everything or anybody else, I think Jesse Ventura was a independent, and he might have even been a libertarian, but he was definitely an independent. So he was a third-party candidate when he became governor of Minnesota. But of course, he had the popularity of being a wrestler as well and everything. But one of the questions I had for both you, Kim, and Dan, because I've heard this from both sides, is that it seems like no matter who wins, Kamala may have a little bit of an advantage because she's she's younger and everything. But no matter who wins, it seems like the parties that have to do
I
something.
can't hear you.
You faded out for a
Can
second.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, no matter who loses, the party that does the party that loses will have to do some kind of like restructuring. And I've heard that from both the Republicans and the Democrats. So I was just wondering y'all's take on that. And it sounds like even the winning party might have to do some restructuring as well. So it sounds like we're having to go towards some restructuring of both of the major parties. So is that what we're heading toward? Because first, no, everybody said, I think even Dan said, that nobody wanted these two candidates. So are we heading to when it was definitely Joe and Donald, but even now some people are not that thrilled with Kamala and everything. So we heading toward a restructuring of both parties. That's my question.
Yeah. Well, I think what's going to happen is if Trump wins, they will pick up where they left off with the pandemic mess and continue with their 2025 policies. They'll continue with the Tax Cut Job Act that and that will continue to go on its same path, which has been predicted that, it will increase the deficit to close to 12 trillion. But, that's what they're going to do. And I think Trump will continue that path. And I think that if Kamala comes in, you're going to see some restructuring of policies, even Biden's policies. You're going to see some new infrastructure come into place. And I think you're going to see a lot more what I would consider some common sense practices and policies that we need for the youth, for elderly, which she has been working on anyway. She's already gotten some policies put into place. So I think we're going to see some changes because, like she said, she is not Biden and she's definitely not Trump. And there are going to be changes. And I think that they're needed changes. I think we need to overhaul the Tax Cut Job Act, at least amended in a couple of ways to cut the deficit. I think that she's got some good ideas, and I think she's got some really crazy ideas, just like Trump. But I don't think she would lead us into 1 million deaths if we got into a pandemic. I think that she could unite people better as they get to know her and trust her. And you're always going to have the naysayers and doubters who don't want to work with anyone and will follow Trump into the desert and drink the sand for him. But, that's just the way that's going to be. But that was weird. I've been predicting that all year, saying that was going to happen. And lo and behold, they all followed him way into the desert, and he left them abandoned there. Okay, Rick.
So we've had the same two major political parties for 165 years.
Scary.
The last shift in parties was in the 60s when the Democrats embraced civil rights and lost a bunch of southern states, and the Republicans, with Nixon's southern strategy, became the dominant political force in the southern states. And under Trump, well, all right, so the Republicans are the party of limited government, but it hasn't been a coherent policy under Trump. If the Republicans wanted to get together with the libertarians and be the party of limited spending, and there is a path towards limited spending for both parties, which is use technology, AI, and other stuff to reduce the manpower needed to govern. But that hasn't been a coherent policy. And if the Republicans have lost the popular vote in every presidential election except for one since 1988, a reformed Republican Party would address the issues that make it unpopular with most voters. But that's doable.
We've been joined by Sharif. I was wondering his take on this. Sharif, we've been talking about the campaign that's coming up in 2 weeks, and I was just wondering, in your area, which is over there by Bangladesh and all of that, are y'all following the American politics? And if so, what is y'all's general read? Because I know you have a bunch of students over there as well. So what is their general read as to what is going on with American politics?
Yeah, I think American politics is very popular country like Bangladesh, and Bangladesh moving with a new reformation of politics. I told you before that the youth communities in Bangladesh, they took power, and the previous government, they left the power. And we are planning to develop the new countries with new democratic system. But definitely, American politics is very important. I'm from debating communities, and I learn a lot personally from American presidential debate. So, as Bangladesh is a world debate champion, both in ESL and in open format. So many university students, they heavily follow American politics. Even today, I have to attend another interview sessions with Professor Adrian David Chuk regarding the American politics. Beside that, the youth community has keen interest about Elon Musk. So when Elon Musk come to the campaign of Trump, it's get the new dimensions for the youth actually following the Elon Musk contributions and something. Uh, Personally, my World Talent Economic Forum, already we have research lab in California, in Dubai, in India, in Bangladesh, and Australia and France. So we are also developing artificial intelligence. We call the point of view called AI in politics, what it called the technocracy, how we can develop better policy for a developing nations, how we can develop a better political environment with a leadership training program. Also, the American government right now, they are collaborating with Bangladesh. Our country chief, Nobel laureate Dr. Mohammad Yunus, working with Clinton Foundations, and American government also focusing on 420 million youth in South Asia for youth development. So, U.S. politics is a very popular thing. USA has a lot of interesting things. They have good cultures, they have good technology, they have good democratic systems, and they have good media. So definitely, a lot of things we can learn from USA.
Yeah, definitely a lot of things being learned in that part of the world and all along those lines. I do, before we get to some of the other serious conversations, I do have to bring up a teasing thought and everything. And maybe you haven't thought about this, Kim, as you've done some world traveling. And I know Sharice over there in Bangladesh, and even Sasha has done some world traveling as well. But apparently, in the country that is also in that general area across from Australia, New Zealand, they've actually got a cap on hugs. That's right. The airport is capping goodbye hugs at 3 minutes because apparently they've got a major traffic jam. So if you want to hug your person goodbye and everything, they've got a 3 minute limit on hugs, and they want you to hug goodbye faster because they are suggesting that that could help things if they would move those public displays of affection to the parking lot. So I just wondering, as you've done a lot of world traveling, Kim, have you seen way too many hugs, and has it created these traffic jams? Because when I saw this, I was like, wait a minute.
I think that 2 minutes and 15 seconds is more than enough.
2 minutes and 15 seconds is more than enough for a hug?
That's it. Out.
Sometimes I feel like I would suffocate under a 2 minute, 15 second. But hug until you don't feel comfortable anymore. I don't see any problem with hugging. I think we don't have enough hugging since COVID. I think COVID detached us, and that's the reason for a lot of the depression that exists today. I think we need to hug more. I'm glad that my friends are huggers. Some hug longer than others, and I'm okay with that.
Rick?
I don't want to talk about hugs.
Okay.
I want to talk about the evenly divided election.
We'll get to what Rick wants to talk about.
So in the past 30 years, no presidential candidate has won more than 53% of the vote. We're equally divided. And that leads to political stalemate, which some people could argue is good, the less the government does, but it also leads to bad stalemate, like the Congress being unable to vote for additional aid to hurricane victims when you have a ton of hurricanes in a row, where we had two big ones just a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And there's room for compromise, and the political parties need to reform their stances. For instance, with gun control, any, like, to the Republicans who are beholden to the NRA, anything done with guns is unacceptable. But there's simple stuff that most people could agree on. For instance, biometric trigger locks. It's a lock that lets you use your gun with your fingerprint. Otherwise, if somebody else wants to get at it, the gun won't unlock. It's simple technology. A biometric lock costs $80. It takes a third of a second to unlock your gun, which isn't unreasonable, even in a crisis situation.
Yeah, but those crisis situations can also be fake crisis situations, because apparently that's something going on in India. Because India says that it's had enough after there were fake bomb threats against almost 100 flights. So I know India's been going through wars with China and everything, but I guess some of the people that are out there that are having nothing better to do with their time, some of them are doing hoax threats, and some of them, I mean, they've got to take these threats seriously because they're in the middle of a conflict. But apparently India is going like, wait a minute, this is way too many fake bomb threats. And I know we've even had fake bomb threats in the U.S. and other places. So anybody got any idea what you can do when people are, we always talk about yelling fire in the clubhouse or yelling fire in general, and it sounds like that's what people are doing with these fake bomb threats. So any ideas, Kim? You got?
I think that's always been a problem. But I'm going to answer to Toby on his question of why not, look at the two economic plans and go with the best one. And the problem is nobody can agree on which one is the best one, and that just makes too much common sense to sit down as a team and work on the country like you would a company. It's just
people can agree that the Trump economic plan, according to budget analysts, would add many more trillions to the deficit than the Harris plan, and would also end bankrupt Social Security faster than the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, Harris' plan is estimated to add 1.7 trillion. This is by various different organizations, not just Democrat. And Trump's is estimated to add anywhere from 6 trillion to 12 trillion. But I mean, I think that was Bloomberg's interview getting a little irritated with Trump. But it is estimated to be considerably higher. And also probably they can't predict how he's going to swing. They have no idea what he's going to do. Harris is a little more easier to predict. Actually, if you listen to her, you can hear her plan if you learn to open your ears and listen. In fact, her opening statement mentioned what she was going to do in her debate, and I don't think anybody heard it. So,
well, the problem with that is she can't get any of that passed, and so it's not realistic anyway. I'm going to go off the edge here and agree with Rick, and somewhat with Kimberly. Okay, there has to be restructuring of both parties. It's gotten ridiculous. David Walker says 70% of Americans agree on what needs to be done with our country, but but they don't have the voice of the American people are not being reflected in the people that we elect. It's a huge problem, and so here's the thing. So if Trump wins, his 4 years, it's done. They're going to be moving on to something else. If Harris wins, we're going to see pretty much the same thing we saw with Biden. We're going to see the same kind of politics, the same people who are behind them, the same globalist agenda being pushed by United Nations and being pushed by this Soroses and everything else, because that's who they are. That's what they do. That's what it's got. If Clinton would have been elected, we would have seen the same thing. It would have been a constant drive to the same goal that the Democrats have in concert with the world establishment. So, I mean, if you're all in for that, vote for that. If you want freedom, liberty, and independence, then consider something else. Trump's far from perfect. He is who he is. You either support him or you don't. And 50% or so of Americans are leaning his way. 50% of Americans or so are leaning the other way. Typically, the Democrats have a much larger number of supporters than that, vis-a-vis the popular vote. But right now, it's pretty even split down the line. So, I'm agreeing with you, Rick. I think there needs to be a consensus built, and maybe it's the Libertarians and the Republicans, or Libertarians and everybody gets together, and we go back to the old way of doing things, which is building consensus and finding solutions for real Americans, and stop. To some extent, gridlock is good because it keeps one party in power from doing stupid stuff the American people really don't want. There's so much stuff that Congress does that people don't want, that intrudes in their lives, that interferes in our liberty, our freedom, our ability to do business and to interact with one another. The COVID debacle was a prime example of that. Look at all the harm that the government did to the people in the COVID debacle, and the people who lost loved ones were unable to have funerals, unable to visit them in their hospital rooms, other things. It was so sad, so tragic, right? So there is so much that can be done just by thinking about common sense solutions. Harris has some ideas, but unfortunately, I don't think they're going to pass by Congress. I doubt she'll get popular support. She's not a dynamic leader. She's unable to convince people. And I doubt that it'll go forward. So we're going to see more of the same if Harris is elected. If Trump is elected, we pretty much know what we're going to see there. At the end of the world, we don't see the end of the world. We're likely to see a de-escalation of the military violence around the world if Trump is elected. World War III won't happen if Trump is elected. World War III might happen if Harris is elected. And so all this stuff about the economic professionals and their advice and all this other BS is the same thing we saw with the 51 intelligence officials, Jacoby, when Biden was telling lies. That both sides lie. Both sides misrepresent. I don't like it, and neither do the American people. I don't think Kimberly likes it. Neither does anybody on this board. I know you're putting up the stuff about Trump ends the transport. I don't care about that, really. I mean, people found their way out of the desert. They just followed the serpent on the stick. That's what they did, right, Kimberly?
They did. They followed the wrong serpent.
There are two forces in that should be shaping American. One should be, and one is. There's a ton of money in political division. That all the 24-hour news channels make a ton of money off of presenting like divisive politics. And Citizens United, there's got to be a way to get rid of Citizens United, which threw a bunch of money into politics. It turned all national office holders, senators, congresspeople into fundraisers. They have two jobs. You're a congressperson, but you also have to spend 20 hours a week in an office building across the street cold calling donors. And that kind of two-job deal attracts not the best political leaders. And that's the result to a large extent of Citizens United, which allowed a lot of money into politics. Now, Mark Cuban said the U.S. continues to dominate the world because we're at the forefront of AI and technology. And our government should reflect that our government should be friendly to the development of technology. And that's why I'm personally for Harris. She's not perfect, but she represents government the way it's always been. Now, you may hate that, but I like kind of just regular old government, as imperfect as it is, because it's not terrible for business. I don't like chaotic government where you have to watch the news every day to see what crazy crap happened, because I think that's bad for business.
Well,
Right.
speaking of that and everything, we
I,
all got.
I want to add one thing. Elections are open. I am wearing my jacket that I have worn since the 80s with a pin that has two fingers pointing at each other and across it saying, this is all our elections do, but or campaigns do. But what we need to do is just get out and vote. That is your freedom of right, the only one that most women have now. Eventually the books will be banned. Our bodies are banned from any choice. So, but get out there and vote, and because that's your choice, and do it right. And
Folks got to get out there and vote, no doubt about that. Just really quickly, because we're going to go to Sasha's show in a few minutes and everything. But Sasha, one of the things that I saw that is one of your other shows, Modern Investment, but definitely it looks like the NVIDIA CEO has vaulted back into the world's top 10 richest for the first time ever and everything. So I don't know if you got any thoughts about the as we're heading out the door about NVIDIA and NVIDIA stock, but it does look like as recently as yesterday, he is now in the top 10 in terms of the world's richest
I
folks.
want to tell you something else. When NVIDIA's capitalization will reach $10 trillion, Jensen will be able to buy, what's his name, J.D. Vance, and the other guy, the vice president. J.D. Vance, Musk,
Tim Waltz, what?
and Mark Cuban, and about 25 other billionaires and trillionaires all together. That's where we are going. And that will take only probably 2, maybe 2.5 years, maybe much faster than that.
That's another reason to get money out of politics, because we're dependent on billionaires not being crazy. Musk is a little bit scattered and cuckoo sometimes, and he gets in there and he does what he wants, and we shouldn't have to depend on whether half a dozen billionaires are crazy or not.
well, they learn. The problem with billionaires is they've learned that they can buy their way out of problems and troubles. And, in the corporate world, the big corporations, Nick and I learned, a lot of these people go, oh, I can go do a startup, where they're so used to having the big money to manipulate things to run with and to do whatever they want with. When they actually get money to do a startup, they blow it all. And we've seen this happen many times. So you just need somebody who understands economy, understands balancing a budget.
You need to overturn Citizens United, get money, make it so money has less leverage. Conservatives hate Soros. Liberals increasingly don't like Musk. Adelson, there are all these the Koch brothers, there are all these billionaires who have too much political power on either side, liberal or conservative. They have their votes count with their money much more than any other individual citizens, and it's bad.
And people really repeat their mistakes over and over. Did you hear the story yesterday about Trump trying to pay off Stormy to be silent again, and they just had new evidence of the settlement? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Same thing. What was it, 11 days before the election? He did all of this and used money.
He's just trying to extort her again. Right?
But I think it's funny that all over again, they're settling again.
Yeah, but it's such a storm of crazy. There's no room in our brain for all this stuff that goes on.
No, there's not. But it's just, I thought it was interesting that here he is again making the same mistake, exactly the same time frame that he did last time that he was convicted for all of those felonies for. It's like you just don't learn, right? Because he knows he's got the money to pay for his mistakes. So
hookers are difficult.
Again, we'll probably have to endure months and months and months of trials, and that's a waste of our money as well.
Hey,
I just want a president who is not being convicted of felonies.
Rick, stay away from the hookers.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree that you don't engage with sex workers. Stay home. If you need to do stuff like that, just wait till the rest of your family goes to sleep and look at naked pictures on the internet.
Is that legal?
I don't know.
There's only a billion pictures. You can always. AI
you know,
is
Trump never learned. And again, like I said, billionaires, they have so much money that they make all these risks and mistakes, knowing that they can just use their money to bail them out. Now our money bails them out. So, I mean, I just want some ethics back in our, I mean, you know, that's hard to find. But I think somewhere one day we'll get back to somebody who really cares about the people and not caring about trying to stay out of jail. But anyway, we're at the end of our show. We'll see everyone tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining us from all over the world. Sharif, Dr. Dan, Rick, and everyone. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.